Hello, hello. This is Sir David the Bard. I have a much longer name. You'll have to look at it on other videos. I am trying to be humble, and it's killing me. Anyway, I wanted to talk about something that a little bit on my mind, and some of the comments that the Mormons make having to do with promises that you promise before God, angels, and these witnesses at this altar that you will never reveal the tokens, signs, and symbols that you have been given this day in the temple. I sometimes try to take perhaps a longer view of principles in life. One of the things I've noticed is that human beings spend their whole lives trying to be able to control their own lives, and none of them succeed. Now, some of us will get a little bit of control here and there, but you can't control death, hurricanes, typhoons, and divorce, and death of a child. You can't control those things. When we make promises as human beings, there's some that want it so rigid that no matter what, under any circumstances, it will never be revealed. Can't be done. Now, I'm not here to say, well, let's all lie to each other, because you all do anyway. I don't. I just don't lie. And I don't cheat, and I don't steal. I cannot get along in this world. I can't. Anyway, a lot of Mormons say, well, Sir David, the Bard, you went to the temple and you promised you would not reveal any of these things, and you revealed all of them. You are a bad person. Well, be that as it may, I could be a bad person whether I revealed them or not. Here's what I'm trying to say. Let's take the principle that when you promise, you never divulge. Okay? Now, as bipolar, what I do, and maybe it's different than normal people, is I take the principle to the extreme. If it's a true principle of life, the extreme doesn't affect it. It doesn't affect it. The principle is the truth. The principle is the truth, and if you extreme it, and that's what I do in my life to determine whether something is an eternal principle or not. Now, let's take a child molester. Let's say that a man or a woman takes a small child and molests it, and then they're fearful of them going to jail, so they will say to the child, now, you promise me that you will never say this to anybody. And the child will go, of course I promise. Of course I promise. And if you do, I will kill your dog and your mother. Oh, I would never say anything. Well, Mormons, do you want to hold them to that promise? And some of you, I can hear it in the back of my mind, say, well, it's different, a promise and a covenant. Is it? Well, a covenant is to God. A promise is to human beings. Well, is it? Maybe you think so. I don't. A promise is a promise. So when the child gets to be 30 years old and realizes that it's been molested, can it say something now? Or it promised. The child promised it would never say anything to anybody. It promised. It promised. And see, the Mormons want to hammer me and say, well, you promised not to tell our secrets. I say, well, yeah, well, I didn't know that they were cult. I didn't know they were fraudulent. I didn't know. And now that I know, the circumstances of promising or covenanting have changed. In my mind, I feel I have an obligation to tell other people in the public what they're getting into. If you're ashamed of what they're getting into, that's your problem. That's your problem, Mormons. My problem is that I was defrauded and lied to, and I promised under certain duress, that's a legal term meaning force, that I would never reveal. Well, it was duress. I didn't have a chance to get out of that temple ceremony. At the very beginning, they said, does anyone want to leave? And I go, well, what are we going to learn? We can't tell you that. You got to leave first. I go, geez, what? This doesn't make sense. So, is the child allowed to say, I've been molested? I promised that I wouldn't say anything, but I am. Now, let's take another extreme. Many times we will say to our loved ones, especially spouses, I promise I will never leave you. Well, that's that's a nice thing for humans to say to each other in a marriage or in a relationship. Well, whatever, a year, 5 years, 15 years later, 40 years later, the spouse comes in and says, oh, I've been having an affair and I have 15 kids by 3 other women. And the wife said, well, I promised I would never leave you. Is her promise still there? Wasn't her promise based on the assumption of fidelity? I think it was. And she may say, screw you. Your ass is out of here. Well, you promised that you would never leave me. Yeah, but you promised me that you wouldn't be screwing every tree and bumper on a car that came along. So, am I worse? Am I worse than those people? Well, the Mormons think that I am. I'm asking myself. I'm not asking for anyone's opinion because it doesn't matter to me. I'm saying that if you've made promises in this life, and most of them are, believe it or not, under duress and under false pretenses, people haven't told you the whole story, or the whole world changed. Now, here's one, and now that I'm older, almost 65, God, I thought I felt the Holy Ghost on me. Shit. How did I know it was him? I didn't. It was just a hand. I'm hallucinating. I didn't take my meds today. Now, here's one that crosses my mind. I don't know what I would do. I know what I would do. I'm 23 years older than my wife. And that's a good thing for me. I think it's a bad thing for her. I don't know. I haven't asked the girl. I don't want to hear the truth. Now, let's say, and I've had quad bypass surgery, so I've been sick. I know what it's like to be so sick and in such pain that you don't care if you're dead or alive. Now, when I'm walking around healthy, I don't care if I'm dead or alive. But anyway, if I became totally, Alzheimer'd, is that a verb? It is now. And I didn't know anybody, and I couldn't do anything, just lay there like a vegetable. Would I expect her to be true and faithful to me in the marriage? Now, I know I'm very different than the rest of you, but my answer is no. No, she's a healthy and a young girl, and she's probably going to take care of me and bring me, food and medicines. But if she went out and divorced me and then married somebody else, or didn't even divorce me, just went out and got a new mate or a new husband, I wouldn't blame her. I wouldn't blame her. I think that she deserves happiness in her life. So when I see these elderly people who faithfully sit by someone who is a vegetable, their bed, nursing them for 23 years, and doesn't ever develop any other relationships, that's their choice. That's fine. I don't care. But in my life and in my choice, yeah, we promise to be there in richer and poorer, in sickness and health. Bullshit. I'm sick. And I don't have health. And she still is a young and healthy person and needs someone to talk to. Most of you go, oh, it's sexual, it's sexual. No, for most people over 40s and 50s, they need a companion. And she doesn't have one. It's not fair. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is that promises, I'm going to be a little radical, promises don't exist. They're hopes, they're wishes, they're dreams, but they're not reality. You can have a tsunami hit your family and sweep your wife out to sea, and after 5 or 6 years she's been dead, you go ahead and marry somebody else. And you promised that you would always love your first wife who was at sea. Well, she's rescued at sea. She comes back. Now, you made a promise that you would never marry anyone else, but she wasn't alive. Now you have 2 that are alive. So in summary, what I am saying is that promises, they don't exist. They are controlled by usually outside circumstances that humans can't control. Now, could I control not saying anything about pay, lay, ale, and chanting and garments and the rest of that crap? I could have. But you know what? It would have killed me. Is it better to divulge the promise and get that shit out of my system and get that out of my mind and my body so I can live happy and healthy? Or should I honor the Mormons? And so they're going to say, honor yourself, you have no integrity. Well, let me tell you something about integrity. Okay? Integrity is something that a man does when nobody will know. When nobody will know. That's real integrity. I felt it was necessary to divulge, and I'll be coming up on 300,000 hits here by Christmas. And I'm not ashamed. I'm not guilty. I don't worry about it. I don't even think about it until a Mormon says, oh, you promised, you promised. No, they're saying you need to keep our secret. We molested you, and you promised that you wouldn't say anything, and now you're saying something, so your promises aren't good. Well, maybe my promises aren't good. I don't know. I've never, screwed around on my wives, and never molested any of my children, and never stolen or, cheated or whatever. But I feel that promises are good faith and good-willed statements if the circumstances continue to be stable. If the circumstances go to shit, the promises go to shit. And I realized that once I got out of the Mormon Church by resignation, how much happier I was. And if I can spread any of that happiness to one soul, 300,000 hits, big deal. 183, 85 countries, big deal. I'm looking for one soul that can benefit from what I'm saying and say, gee, I'm really glad that guy said something because that's the way I feel. And then they find a way to make themselves happy and get away from the stress and the anger and the frustration and the fear. So, I promise you I will never die. I promise you I will record every day. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. But hell, I'm going Christmas shopping right now, so screw you. I'm not going. The circumstances changed. The baby wants her Christmas presents, and I'm not going to promise you something and then have to go and run and do that. And then my other one comes back. I got to take her for babysitting today. So promises are goodwill statements. They're not in cement, and they're not in eternal consequences. That just doesn't exist. Thanks.